Peace. Kareem Soundy back again with another video. Alright, so celibacy, semen retention. If you actually follow me back when I was Red Reams, I always talked about nofap, semen retention, and using those things, sexual alchemy in general. Using sexual alchemy and understanding these things about ourselves for enlightenment, for transformation. Semen retention and celibacy, and also nofap too, a lot of those things are, at least now, they're thrown around a lot, and they're used, they are used, for bettering ourselves. But what I've seen a lot, especially being a former, or I would still say, a person who is still a YouTuber on these topics, right? Because I will be making more content on sexual alchemy in the future, but, being someone who talked about these things, one thing that I always said is that these systems, these tools, right, these ways of life, they're used for bettering not just your physicality, but also your spirituality too. Nofap, letting go of porn, right? Because porn is something that a lot of people struggle with, mainly men too. But there's also many women that struggle with porn. Letting go of porn, depending on who you are, is a very good thing because, it really opens up your perception over sexuality being more than just, raw sex. You begin to open up your perception to greater realities than just, busting everywhere. You know what I mean? So and semen retention as well, for men primarily, semen retention is actually detaching yourself, from feeling like you always have to orgasm, whether it's through sex or whether it's through masturbation as well. Gaining control over oneself, the nature of sexuality is very complex, and now what I've seen is that nofap, semen retention, those two things actually, they've kind of been reduced because they've initially been, things that were used to elevate the consciousness, but now it seems like these two things are being used just to elevate the ego, and it's primarily, I would say, semen retention. Nofap is good for anyone who's struggling, with a porn addiction, but semen retention, is more than just physical benefits. It's more than just, increased muscle mass. It's more than just increased hair growth, confidence, and testosterone boosting and everything, because semen retention it's good for those things, but we have to recognize, this is a form of sexual alchemy, so if you're just doing it, right, especially because I see a lot of men, they're doing it mainly for their humanity, using it to perhaps, have better look with women just because you're holding in your seed, right? The truth of the matter is, if you don't have the benefits within first, semen retention can never do anything for you. Same with nofap, right? If you don't find solace within, if you don't find, confidence within, if you don't deal with those emotional problems and you just seem to, chalk most of them up to being something outside of you, right? Like porn, right? For example, if you can't deal with those things or understand those parts of yourself, without doing these things, then you'll actually begin to use these things as a crutch. And so they'll become something that your humanity, your ego clings to in order to feel better about yourself. Because you've programmed your subconscious mind to believe that this is what I need to work, for me to better myself. You've deified it. You've given it a place in your subconscious mind as something to worship, in essence, something to a belief system to follow, and that could be very detrimental on your spiritual path. It could really be distracting too, because essentially, if you're not using these things for elevation of your consciousness, all you're doing is feeding your ego, and really, these things have become a topic of debate, between men, looking down on other people for, being on different paths. It doesn't necessarily matter whether you're on semen retention or not. And if you're someone who truly enjoys using porn, it doesn't matter whether you're on nofap or not, because like I said in many videos, we're on different paths and we're all not the same, so there's not one clear cut way for people to do things, because sometimes some people might have to do the exact opposite of what you're doing just to actually, elevate their consciousness or experience certain things and learn different lessons. The nature of life is that one size shoe doesn't necessarily fit all people. Otherwise we would have all been created the same. So, but these systems of sexual alchemy, they can be used for elevating your consciousness. Semen retention, for many men who don't know how to raise light within themselves, semen retention is actually a way of raising light, because the seed carries, the divine spark within you. It carries a light within you, and that's the male sexual energy, and learning how to control that and cultivate that within, actually allows you to elevate your consciousness if you're doing it with that intention. A lot of men, they'll do it, but they won't necessarily understand it, because the more popular these things become, as with many things, the more popular something becomes, the more the essence of it is lost because of how mainstream it becomes. So we have to really understand that this is a spiritual practice, and when it comes to me talking about sexual alchemy, I'll always speak from a spiritual perspective, because I know, not just in my experience, of having done, over 100 days of semen retention and nofap together, but not only will I speak from that experience, but I also speak, in just for myself in general and how that's transformed me, because I did experience all the physical benefits from these things, but these semen retention, at least in the very beginning of my spiritual journey, was something that really helped elevate my consciousness. It accelerated my spiritual awakening, because it was actually cultivating that kundalini energy and raising it up. And I began meditating around the time that I actually began, I'd say at least a month after I really got on a good streak, with semen retention. When I began meditating, my consciousness began transforming. So I would say, for a lot of people especially who have at least some degree of spirituality within them, whether it be through any kind of system that you follow, find how, if you're practicing semen retention, find how those things relate to that, and then relate that to yourself, relate that to your journey. It's not necessarily about other people doing the same thing as you. It's not necessarily about looking down on others for not being the same way as you, but see how it affects you, how it transforms you, how it brings out the light within you, and you'll begin to see things in a much different light, because that's really what it's all about. You're doing it for you, not for anything else outside of you. If you do it for anything else outside of you, you'll know nothing else but suffering. This is why a lot of people, they'll quit nofap, they'll quit semen retention, because their headspace wasn't right. These things, they're still beneficial, but your physical benefits only go so far. You have to find a proper balance with these things, because if you don't, and you don't find a spiritual understanding of them, then you're forever limited to, just your ego's understanding of what these things can do for you. And your ego just wants validation at the end of the day. Your ego just wants to feel good about itself at the end of the day. And it'll do anything. It'll latch onto anything to make that so. So even if it could be anything beneficial to you, and it'll take that and it'll either make it dogmatic, or it'll make it into something that only feeds your validation, and only feeds it in general. And when it begins to do that, it begins to shut down your spirituality. So I'm still going to make semen retention content in the future, not like how I was before, where every video was about it, but I'm going to dive deeper into just exactly how these things help, the male sexual energy. It's very key for, transformation on a spiritual path. You want to understand that. So 2 books I want to recommend to get. You want to get Montauk Chia's Taoist Secrets of Cultivating Male Sexual Energy. If I'm not mistaken, that's what the title is. He talks about semen retention in that entire book, and how pretty much everything that I've talked about in the past in my old videos, but he mainly focuses on, you know, most of the spirituality within it too. And there's also a good amount of science inside of that as well. So pick up that book, and also pick up Sexual Alchemy by Donald Tyson. That way you can really learn how to use your sexual energy for spiritual benefit as well. Donald Tyson gets really deep into that. That's actually one of my favorite books in general that I've read on my spiritual journey. And that's pretty much the video for today. Hope it inspired you guys, and peace.